Good morning, sir. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning,
Good
ma'am.
morning, ma'am.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. So I'm audible to everyone.
Yes,
Yeah?
ma'am.
Okay. So before starting the class, I just want to have a small discussion with, sorry, not respiratory, excretory system and reproductive system. Okay. So today we will going to start with the excretory system of finfishes. First, we will discuss about the excretory system, and then we will discuss about the reproductive system in finfishes. Okay. So today we'll start with excretory system. Anyone can tell me what is the function of excretory system, or what does mean the excretory system in general?
वेस्ट बॉडी में जो भी वेस्ट मतलब प्रोडक्ट है उसका बॉडी से बाहर निकालना एक्सक्रीटरी सिस्टम का मेन फंक्शन.
Okay, so the excretory system is basically to excrete out the nitrogenous waste from the body. Okay, particularly this is a system which is made up of an organ and the tissues and the organ which function together to remove the nitrogenous waste. Okay, if I'm talking about excretory system, then you have to remember it nitrogenous waste, because the CO2 is also a metabolic byproduct. The nitrogenous waste in the animal body is a byproduct of a metabolic reactions. Okay, so the byproduct of the metabolic reaction can be CO2 also. Okay, but the removal of the CO2 from the body is comes under the gaseous exchange or the respiratory system, is it? And when we talk about the excretory system, we talk about particularly the removal of the nitrogenous waste. Okay, so today we will see about the excretory system. Okay, so the main function of the excretory system or the organ is to control the osmolarity and the volume of the body fluid. Okay, so basically it excreted out the solute which is present in excess, which is changing the osmolarity of the cells, the body fluid. Okay, so basically it gives out the nitrogenous waste. The nitrogenous waste which is accumulated inside the animals in the form, some in the form of, in some in the form of ammonia, in some in urea, and in there are few animals in the form of uric acid. Okay, so whether it is ammonia, urea, or uric acid, all these three nitrogenous waste are toxic. Okay, when they are stored in the body, they are toxic. Okay, they degenerate the several enzymes which is a vital protein in the cell to carry out, to catalyze the various biological reactions. Okay, so they needs to be removed out from the body. So the very first function of the excretory system is to excrete out the nitrogenous waste. By removing the nitrogenous waste from the body, the excretory system helps in keeping the homeostasis of the body. Means it basically keeps the osmolarity of the organ of the animal constant or at the desired level. Okay, and it also balances the pH of the body fluid, the pH of the blood, and the because whenever we talk about any biological reactions which takes place inside the body, it is very sensitive to the pH. Okay, means the pH of the fluid can revert the direction of the reaction. Okay, so a constant the pH of the blood or the pH of the other body fluid is very vital in determining the smooth maintenance of the organism. Okay, so the excretory system, it basically removes the nitrogenous waste. By the mean of this, it keeps the homeostasis or maintain the osmolarity of the organism, and it also balance the blood and the body fluid pH. Okay, now, as I have told, when the carbohydrate and fats are metabolized, okay, they were broken down into the carbon dioxide and water. So the carbon dioxide is excreted through the gills when we talk about, or in the lungs when we talk about the vertebrates. Okay, and the proteins and the nucleic acid, when the proteins and the nucleic acids are broken down into the simpler form, okay, they both carried the amino group. The proteins are broken down into the amino acids, and the nucleic acid have the nitrogenous bases. Okay, so they all have the amino group, and they were further broken down into the nitrogenous compound like ammonia, urea, and uric acid. Okay, so in the fishes, most of the bony fishes and aquatic invertebrates, they excrete the nitrogenous waste in the form of ammonia. And the mammals, most of the amphibians and the cartilaginous fishes, okay, they excrete the nitrogenous waste in the form of urea. And the birds, insects, and reptiles, they excrete the nitrogenous waste in the form of uric acid. Okay, so the animal which excrete the nitrogenous waste in the form of ammonia are known as ammonotelic animals. So basically the bony fishes are ammonotelic animals. Then the animal which secretes the urea, they are known as ureotelic animals, like mammals, like we, the human. Then the cartilaginous fishes and most of the amphibians, they are ureotelic. They excrete the urea as a nitrogenous waste. Then the animals which excrete the uric acid, they are known as the uricotelic animals, like birds, insects, and reptiles. Now here we see compare the three nitrogenous waste products, okay, in the animal group, like the ammonia, urea, and uric acid. So whenever we talk about the toxicity of the nitrogenous waste, the ammonia have the highest toxicity and the uric acid have the lowest. Okay, so when an animal need to excrete the nitrogenous waste in the form of ammonia, it requires a high amount of water, then a medium amount of water in case of urea, and the low amount of water in case of uric acid. And the energy which is required to spend, okay, which is spent for excretion of the nitrogenous waste for ammonia is the lowest, and for the uric acid is highest. So the fishes, as I have told, most of the bony fishes, they are ammonotelic. Ammonotelic, why they are ammonotelic? Because they can afford the large amount of water, because they are in the water. Okay, so they can use high amount of water, and because and so they have the advantage of having the high amount of water. And by excreting the ammonia, the nitrogenous waste in the form of ammonia, they have to spend the low energy, okay, a less energy for excretion. So in the fishes and then amphibians, the ammonia is the preferred form of the means nitrogenous based excretory material. Then urea in the mammals and the birds, reptiles, and arthropods, because many of the species, they were in the deserts, okay, or the fishes, the birds, they were in the flying, so they have the they doesn't have the advantage of having the high water in the surroundings. So they have the strategy of the uric acid. Okay, they conserve the water and they excrete the nitrogenous waste in the form of uric acid. Okay, now as I have told, the major function of the excretory system is to excrete out the nitrogenous waste. So the main organ, the major organ of excretion in the vertebrate is basically the kidney. Okay, so kidney is basically a filtration system which actually filtrate the body fluid or the blood. Okay, it filters the nitrogenous waste from the blood, okay, and then it excreted out from the body in the form of urine. So basically there is three type of kidneys which are present in the vertebrates. That is the most primitive one is the pronephrotic kidney, and the most advanced one is the metanephrotic kidney. So there are three type of kidneys in the vertebrates: the pronephrotic kidney, the mesonephrotic kidney, and the metanephrotic kidney. So in the cartilaginous fishes, the adults have the pronephrotic kidney. The pronephrotic kidney is the simplest form of the kidney, where the blood is filtered in the glomerulus, and then it enters into the funnel which have the ciliated lining. Okay, so the sharks, in the adult sharks or in the elasmobranchs, the type of kidney is most primitive type, pronephrotic type. And what is the mechanism? It filters the nitrogenous waste from the body fluid. In other type of kidney, what happens? They filters the nitrogenous waste from the blood. But here, because they simply filter the nitrogenous waste from the body cavity and excrete them out. Okay, then the second one is the mesonephrotic kidney. So the fishes, the teleost, the adult teleost fishes have the mesonephrotic kidney. The embryo of means during the embryonic stages in the adult fishes, bony fishes, they have the pronephrotic kidney, which is developed into the in adults, it develops into the Mesonephrotic means during the embryonic stages, they have pronephrotic kidney, which is metamorphs and become the mesonephrotic kidney. The difference between the pro and mesonephrotic kidney, it filters the waste from the blood, not from the body cavity, and the excreted material in the form of urine, it goes out from the body via the tubes called as mesonephric duct or the Wolffian duct. Okay, so the mesonephrotic kidney is developed in the adult kidney, developed into the adult kidney in fishes and amphibians. Okay, and then the metanephrotic kidney, as I have told, this is the most advanced form of the kidney in the animals. So they are found in the reptile, birds and mammals. But the embryonic stages of these animals, the reptile, birds and animals, they have the mesonephrotic kidney. Okay, and during the embryonic stage they have a mesonephrotic kidney, and in the adults they have the metanephrotic kidneys. The difference between the meso and meta is that in both the case the waste is excreted from the blood only, but in the metanephrotic kidney it goes out from the body through the tube which is known as the ureter. Okay, so that is the comparison of the three type of kidneys which are present in the animals. So when we talk about the fish in particular, the elasmobranchs branches have the pronephrotic kidney in the adult stage, and the teleost fishes have the, or the bony fishes have the mesonephrotic kidney in the adult stage. Now the excretory organ. So the chief excretory organ in the fishes is basically the kidney. Okay, and then there are other organs which forms the entire excretory system are ureter, urinary bladder and urinogenital aperture. So kidney, it is composed of several tubules. Okay, the kidney tubules, which is also known as nephrons. So their number varies from 100 to the 10,000, and these nephrons are basically the structural and functional unit of kidney. Okay, and if we talk about the fishes, there is the fish kidney is divided into two parts, the head and the trunk. When you have the anatomy dissection, you must have visualized the kidney, this dark color structure, okay, which is running on the both side of the vertebrae. Here you can see that this one and this one, this is the kidney. Okay, the upper portion, this and this is the head kidney, and this one which is running along to the tail, this is the trunk kidney. Okay, so there is basically 5 type of kidney, okay, in the marine fishes, and there is 3 type of kidney as found in the freshwater fishes. Okay, so so this type is basically based on the shape of the kidney, whether it is a marine fishes or the freshwater teleost, they all have the kidney which have the trunk and head demarcation. Okay, the trunk kidney is there, head kidney is there. The difference or this type is based on the difference in the shape of those kidneys. So here we can see that this is the type 1 kidney, this is type 2, type 3, type 4 and type 5. So these all type 5 are found in the marine teleost, and type 1, type 2 and type 3, they are found in the freshwater teleost. Okay, now the system, as I have told, there is a when we are talking about the urinogenital system, means we are talking about the system, the reproductive and excretory system together. So this is the anatomy of the urinogenital system of the male teleost. Here you can see that this is the head kidney and this one is the trunk kidney, which have a pair of the nephrotic duct which opens into the, these two is open into the urinary bladder. And then here you can see that one thing, the sperm duct, okay, the sperm duct and the urinary bladder duct, they both open into a single pore. Means the sperms and the urine, they excreted out from the body through a single pore, okay, or a common pore. Okay, that is why it is so known as the urinogenital pore. But when we talk about the same system in the female fish in the teleost, they have separate aperture. For excretion of the urine, they have the one pore, and for excretion of the female gamete, they have, or for the release or secretion of the female gamete, they have the another pore. Here you can see that this is the head kidney, trunk kidney, then the nephrotic duct, urinary bladder, and then the urinary pore. And here you can see that the ovaries, a pair of ovaries, and then this oviduct is open in the, and then it has a different pore which is known as the genital pore. That is the difference between the opening in the male and the female. Okay, then now we'll discuss about the structure of the unit of kidney, that is nephron. Okay, it basically have the three parts. The number one is the renal or the Malpighian corpuscle, which have further two parts, the glomerulus and the Bowman's capsule. Then the renal tubule, which have four divisions, the neck region, followed by the first proximal segment, then second proximal segment, and the last segment is known as the distal segment. And at the end of the nephron, which is known as the collecting duct or a collecting tubule. So here we can see that the structure of the nephron altogether. Here you can see that this is the glomerulus, this is Bowman capsules, then the neck region, okay, then first proximal region, then second proximal region, distal segment, and the collecting duct. So here we can see that in detail the glomerulus and the Bowman's capsule, okay, or the renal corpuscle. Here is the efferent arteriole, and that is the afferent arteriole. Okay, so what happened when the blood which have loaded with the nitrogenous waste is comes inside the glomerulus, there is a fenestrated endothelium. Fenestrated endothelium means it have a layer which have the sieves, okay, एक filters के जैसे उसमें sieves हैं, so that actually the here the filtration of the nitrogenous waste occur, means the nitrogenous waste, they get filtered out from here to the Bowman's capsule, okay, and from Bowman's capsule it goes to the nephrotic tubules, where is the first is the neck region, followed by the proximal, first proximal, second proximal, and distal region. Okay, so when I am talking about the kidney in the fishes particular, it is divided into two parts, the head kidney and the trunk kidney. So when we talk about the excretory function, only the trunk kidney have the excretory function, means the majority of the nephrons, the tube, majority, or we can say the almost all the nephrons which have excretory function, they are in the trunk kidney region. Okay, their number varies from 100 to 10,000, and they are in the trunk kidney. They're used to produce the urine. They have the renal corpuscle, means the Bowman's capsule and the glomerulus. Okay, so trunk kidney actually perform the excretory function, not the head kidneys. So what is the function of the head kidney? So when we see the structure of the head kidney, it is composed of the lymphoid tissues and hematopoietic tissues. What is the hematopoietic tissue? Anyone can tell me? Hematopoietic tissue किसे बोलते हैं? Anyone?
Blood forming.
Yes, okay, they are basically the blood forming cells. The kidney is basically the hematopoietic, head kidney is the hematopoietic organ. Not only hematopoietic organ, it also have the lymphoid tissues and some of the interrenal and chromaffin tissue. So this interrenal and chromaffin tissues, they have endocrine function, okay. They secrete some of the hormones, okay, which regulates the some of the important metabolic process. This interrenal and the chromaffin tissues, hematopoietic tissues have the hematopoietic function, and then the lymphoid tissues have the function which is related to the blood cell formations and immunity. Okay, so head kidney is not excretory in function. Trunk kidney is excretory in function, and head kidney is hematopoietic, okay, as well as endocrine function. Okay. So this is the distal segment of the, this is the transverse section of the proximal and distal segment of the nephrotic duct. And now the excretory system. Here you can see that this is the blood which is loaded with the nitrogenous waste. When it comes here in the glomerulus, it gets filtered, okay, and then after filtration, when it comes to the proximal segments, there is a reabsorptions occur, okay. So when I'm talking about the excretory system, means it disposes the metabolic waste, it regulates the solute concentration in the body, and it basically have the four major processes. The very first one is the filtration, where the pressure filtering of the body fluid occurs, okay. So the water, salt, sugar, and amino acids and nitrogenous waste, they get filtered here. Okay. So what happened during this filtration, some of the valuable solutes also get filtered. Okay. So in this segment, in this proximal segment, what happened, there is a reclaiming of these substances occur. So that reclaiming is simply by the uh, reabsorption. Okay, so basically the some valuable solutes like glucose, salt, and some of the amino acid, they simply again reabsorb in the blood. And then third is the secretion. Some of the larger molecules which cannot get filtered through this glomerulus, they are actually secreted from blood to directly to the urine. Okay, and then last one is the excretion, where the filtrate leaves the system in the form of urine. So this is about the excretory system in general. And now again, in the last, the function of the excretory system, it removes the excess salt and water. Okay, it produce and remove the urine which contains some of the amino acids, some nitrogenous waste, urea and uric acid. And in marine fishes, the kidney not only remove the urea as a nitrogenous waste, it also removes the magnesium and sulfate ion as well as the TMO. TMO is trimethyl amine oxide. Okay. So, and some of the excretion is also occurs through the gill. When we talk about the excretion, is basically the removal of the waste material. So some of the ammonia, it also get diffused through the gill surface, then carbon dioxide and urea also. Okay, so the major or the chief excretory organ is kidney, but gills also perform the partial excretion of some of the waste material from the body. So this was about the excretory system. So now we will come to the reproductive system in the fishes. Okay, so before starting the reproductive system, I just want to ask from you people, anyone can define me what makes living thing different from the non-living? ऐसा क्या है which what is the main or difference between the living and the non-living object? Anyone?
Mode of reproduction.
Mode of reproduction.
Ma'am, living beings can reproduce.
Yes, the major difference between the living and the non-living is the living entities, the anything which is living on this planet, okay, it can reproduce. It can reproduce, that's why it is living. Okay, so the reproduction is a trait which defines the living thing. Okay, so if we talk about the reproduction, is basically a co-evolved traits which produce the another generation. Okay, and that will produce the another and the another and another. Means if something can reproduce, then it can be defined as a living thing. Okay, so when we talk about the reproduction, is basically a biological process by which a new offspring or the individual organism is produced from their parents. Okay, and the reproduction is basically the fundamental feature of all the known life. Okay, so the each or the individual or the living organism which exists is basically a result of reproduction. Okay, and when we talk about the reproduction, basically there is a two type of reproduction. One is the sexual reproduction and another one is the asexual reproduction. When we talk about the sexual reproduction, it is the reproduction where the mating of the male and female gametes takes place. Whenever there is an involvement of the male and female gametes, okay, or the mating of the male and female gametes takes place, then it is known as the sexual reproduction. And when there is not such mating of male and female gametes, then it is known as the asexual reproduction or parthenogenetic reproduction. So whenever I talk about the fishes, I have told the most diverse group of vertebrates. So any adaptation or any variation you just talk about, you will find in the fishes. So the same in the case of reproduction. So the fishes, they are the fishes. Most of the fishes, they reproduce sexually. Okay, but there are several fishes which can reproduce by the asexual methods. Okay, and so here we will see what are the different methods in the reproduction in the fishes. So as I have told, most of the fishes, they are bisexual or heterosexuals, means the male and female gamete producing organs are in two different organism or individual of a same species. Okay, so most of the fishes, they are bisexual or heterosexual, but there are the fishes which are hermaphrodite also. When we talk about the hermaphrodite, means we are talk about the animals which have both the organs or system which can produce male and female gametes in the same body, in the same individual is capable of producing male and female gamete. Okay, and this also have two division. One is the simultaneous and another one is the sequential. Simultaneous means what? लगातार या साथ में. Okay, so when we talk about the simultaneous hermaphrodite, means we talk about the fishes in which they function as both male and a female at the same time. Means the fish, they have both type of gamete producing cells. At the same time, they can produce the male gamete as well as the female gamete. So they are known as simultaneous hermaphrodites. There are 23 families of the fishes which have the simultaneous hermaphrodite sexual type reproduction. Okay, like the fishes from the Anguilliformes, okay, eels, then Antheriformes and the killifish. They all are the simultaneous hermaphrodite. Then another one is the sequential hermaphrodite. Sequential hermaphrodite means at one time they have one type of sex, but in the same life they can change to another type of sex. Okay, suppose they start their life as a one sex. The fish start the life as a male. Okay, and after some time it changes into a female, or it started as a female and changes into the male. So that type of system is known as the sequential hermaphrodite system. So as I have told, the fish have started as a one sex, either the male then converted to the female, or female is converted into the male. Okay, so that's why it have two types of the sequential hermaphrodites are of two types. One is the protandrous and other one is the protogynous. So androus means male, gynous means female, pro means pele. So protandrous means if a fish is first male then become female. Okay, they are known as the protandrous hermaphrodite. And when we talk about the protogynous, pro means first and then gynous means female. So the first female followed by the male. Okay, so they are the protogynous hermaphrodites. So the sequential hermaphrodites are of two types: the protandrous, first male, then female later, then protogynous, first female and male later. Now, the category, the asexual reproduction. Okay, so the fish, there are some fishes which can produce asexually. So the example is the Amazon molly, that is Poecilia formosa. In this kind of parthenogenetic reproduction, what I have told, a reproductive method where there is a no mating of two gametes, male and female gametes. So basically in this fish, in the parthenogenetic reproduction, the unfertilized eggs is developed into the embryo. This parthenogenetic asexual is also of two types. One is known as gynogenetic and another one is known as hybridogenetic. When we talk about the gynogenetic mode of asexual reproduction, what happened? The sperm is needed for the activation of the egg development. Okay, but it doesn't mate with the, or it doesn't fertilize the egg. Okay, sperm is required to trigger the next stage of the egg development or the development of the embryo from the egg, but without fertilization. Okay, that's why it is asexual. Then in hybridogenetic, what happened? The fertilizations occur by the male of another species. Okay, but what happened? The male gene or the male genome or the male chromosomes, they get discarded in the next generation. Okay, so that is also a kind of asexual reproduction, the gynogenetic and hybridogenetic. Now the reproductive strategies. Okay, the fishes have basically three types of reproductive strategies: the non-guarders, guarders and bearers. When I talk about the non-guarders, means they are the fishes which actually lay their leg in the open places and simply leave that place. Okay. And then guarders are basically the fishes which actually show the parental caring. Okay. They build a nest or they choose a substrate and then they guard their young ones. Okay. They are known as the guarders. And the third one is the live bearers. Live bearers means they carry the hatched young ones. In guarders and non-guarders, they basically release the egg in the open system. Okay, but in the live bearer, they actually bears the young ones. Okay, the hatched ones, the hatchlings. Okay, so the non-guarders have two category. One is the open substrate spawner, which simply lays the egg in the open places. Another one is the brood hiders, where the brooders, okay, they lays the eggs in some hidden places just to protect them from the predators. Then the guarders, in some fishes only male, in some fishes only female, in some fishes both the parents. Okay, they guard the eggs and the larva. So they are also of two types. One is the substrate chooser and another one is the nest spawner. When I'm talking about the substrate chooser, means they choose a substrate, okay, a hidden place or something under the water body where they can lay the egg and they can guard until they becomes until they becomes more independent to live the free life. Okay, and the nest spawner are the group of fishes which actually build the nest for their young ones. Okay, they build a different type of nest in the water body, and in this nest they lays the egg and then they protect that nest. Okay, and then live bearer, there is a two type of live bearer. One is the external and another one is the internal bearer. Okay, some bears on the external and some bears inside the in mother's belly. Okay, so we'll see one by one. Here you can see that this is the beta splendid or the क्या कहते हैं fighting fish भी बोलते हैं इसको. Here you can see this is the bubble nest, or here this is the bubble nest. Okay, so this fish basically by the mouth movement it actually cause the frothing. Okay, उस frothing से क्या होगा, bubbles बहुत सा मतलब मुंह के उससे वो froth mouth movement से they generate the froth or the bubbles और उससे they used to build a nest. Okay, here you can see that, you see the young ones, the young larvae, they are attached with these bubbles. Okay, so this is one of the example, okay, which actually the fish which build the bubble nest, and in those bubble nests they lays the egg and then they guard their or they protect their young one. Okay, here you can see that this is basically a nest which is prepared by a puffer fish in the bottom of the sea. Here you can see the bottom of the water bottle. This is a nest which is built by the fish, okay, where they can lay the eggs and then protect the young ones. Now the mating system, okay, and the fish have all the possible type of mating system. Okay, here we're going to discuss one by one. The first one is the promiscuous mating system, where both sex have the multiple partner. Okay, means the female have the multiple male partners, the male have the multiple female partner, and that is the most common type of mating system occurs in the fishes. Then there is another system, polygamy. Poly means many, gamy means female. So here the gamy means gamete, not female. The poly means many, and gamy means the here either the male or a female, they have the multiple partners. Okay, in a given breeding season, male or a female have a multiple partners. Now the polygynous, poly means many, gynous means female. So there is a male with multiple female partners. Then this mating system is known as a polygynous mating system. Now polyandry, poly means many, andry male. So there is a female with multiple male partners. Okay, so that is known as polyandry. Then the last one is the polygamy, where the mating pair remains together over time. Okay, and means they have only one male with the one female with the one male. Okay, So this is so all the possible type of mating system, they are present in the fishes, and the both sex with multiple partner is the most common type of mating system which exists in the fishes. Now the method of fertilization. Okay, so in the fishes, basically three type of fertilization: the external, internal, and buccal fertilization. Somehow I mixed that external fertilization. Okay, वो slide में शायद delete हुआ है, कुछ problem हुआ. Okay, so when I'm talking about the external fertilization, basically the male and female, they both release the egg in the open water and the sperm fertilize the egg. Okay, that is known as the external fertilization. And the internal fertilization, where the male release the sperm inside the female's body and where the fertilization occur, that is known as the internal fertilization. Okay, so the external fertilization doesn't require the complicated anatomical system or the physiological system. Basically, the male and the female gametes, they get released in the open environment, where in the close vicinity, and they the sperm simply fertilize the egg. That is the external fertilization. That is very common in most of the fishes. Okay, why? Because they are aquatic, और aquatic system में external fertilization बहुत ही convenient system hai for fertilization. Then another one is the internal fertilization, which is very common in the cartilaginous fishes. Okay, so what happened? It requires so many things. It requires the lengthy courtship period, then the preparation of mating, and because the fertilization is internal, the sperms need to be transferred inside the female body, so they also need the intromittent organ. Okay, so in cartilaginous fishes, their pelvic fin, in the male, the pelvic fin is modified into the clasper that actually helps in holding and the female fish and transferring the sperm. Then modified anal fin in some of the teleost fishes also, like polycelids and the goodies, and some have the modified genital papilla in the embiocotids. Okay, and they also need a sperm storing structure when the fertilization methods is internal, like seminal vesicle in the male. And there is another category of the fertilization which takes place in the fishes, is the buccal fertilization. Okay, this buccal fertilization is a mechanism of fertilization which occurs in the Corydoras fishes. Okay, what happened? Basically, the male fish release the sperms near the mouth of the female fish, and what happened? Female basically lay the egg, it keeps in the mouth, and the male come and it release the sperms near the mouth, and the female engulf those sperms. So the fertilization is basically occurs inside the buccal cavity, inside the mouth of the female fish. So that is known as the buccal fertilization. Okay, so these are the three type of fertilization, or the method of fertilization which occurs in the fishes: the external fertilization, the internal fertilization, and the buccal fertilization. Now, the reproduction method I have told when we talk about the internal fertilization, then there is a two category. Okay, so first we will talk about the external fertilization, where the fishes are oviparous, means they lays the egg, okay, out. So female fish, it basically produce the egg, and the development of egg takes outside the maternal body. That is a very common in most of the bony fishes, is the oviparous method. Okay, then the live bearers. Live bearers have two type of method. One is the viviparous, another one is the ovoviviparous. So when we talk about the viviparous, the fertilization is internal, and gestation, during the gestation period, means the development of the fertilized egg, or the development from zygote to the adult one, they occurs inside the female, and there is a transfer of nutrient from mother to the developing embryo. Okay, that is condition is known as the viviparous, and such kind of viviparous fishes belongs to the family Anablipidae, then Genicidae, then Codidae, and Poecilidae. Okay, and then is the ovoviviparous, means fertilization is internal. Okay, Fertilization is internal, but the development of the young one or the embryonic, during the embryonic development, there is a no exchange of the nutrient between the mother and the embryo. Okay, so embryo basically is sustained only on the yolk reserve of the oocyte. Fertilization is internal, but no transfer of nutrient from mother to the young one or the mother to the developing embryo. That condition is known as the ovoviviparous. So that is present in the Scorpinidae, Cotidae, and Hexagramidae families of fishes. Okay. So now the sexual dimorphism. Whenever I talk about the sexual dimorphism, means a secondary sexual character that can be used to distinguish the two sexes of a same species. Okay. So basically they are the character which discriminate the male and a female of the same species. It may be in the form of some of the morphological peculiarity, means like which helps in the felicitation of ova or the copulatory organ in the male, or some have the structural peculiarity that is not related to the fertilization, but it is meant for courtship or fighting with other male. Okay, so there are some of the characters which are more discriminable during the breeding season, like the size of the fish, the shape, length, and texture of the fins, the coloration of the fish, the shape of the genital papilla, the oviposition, the shape of the mouth. All these are some of the um, morphological differences occurs in the sexual dimorphic organ. So what is the function of the secondary sexual character? It first one, it helps in the recognition of the opposite sex. Okay, it helps in the action of the copulation. Okay, it helps in the transform of the spermatozoa from male to female, and in some fishes it also facilitates the parental care. Now the reproductive morphology. When we talk about the reproductive morphology, there is a difference between the cartilaginous fishes and the bony fishes. As most of the cartilaginous fishes, the fertilization is internal. In most of the bony fishes, the fertilization is external. So there is a general difference between their reproductive morphology or anatomy also. In the cartilaginous fishes, the male have the testes, which have the Leydig gland, seminal vesicle, cloaca, and clasp. Claspor. In the female, there is a ovi, ostium tubule, oviduct, shell gland, or the uterus. And some fishes have, some doesn't, and the cloaca. And when we talk about the bony fishes, then male have the testes, vas deferens, and urogenital pore. In the female, ovary, oviduct, and the genital pore. Okay. Now the reproductive organs. So here we will discuss about the male and the female reproductive organ one by one. So the fishes, they have one pair of bilateral gonads. Okay, means if we cut the body of the fish in the half, the one half have the one and another half have the another set of reproductive organs. So they basically have a single pair of bilateral gonads. Okay, they are generally symmetrical, means both are of equal structure, shape, and size. Okay, so basically they are attached through the mesenteries to the abdominal, in the abdominal cavity. Okay, so in the male, these mesenteries are called, mesenteries are basically the doubled peritoneum. Okay, double membrane peritoneum. So in the male, the mesentery is called mesoarchium, and in female, the mesentery is called mesovarium. So now the male reproductive organ. So in the male reproductive organ, it is composed of basically three. This is we are discussing about in bony fishes and teleost. Okay, so the testes, it is basically a paired, elongated, flattened structure. Okay, and which is attached to the abdominal cavity by the mean of mesoarchium. Okay, it have the sperm duct or vas deferens. Sorry, and then the genital pore. So here now the development of the sperm. So what happened? The testes have the primary spermatogonium. Okay, so this spermatogonium is basically the undifferentiated germ cell which after growth and differentiated develops into the sperms. So what happened, the spermatogonium, here in this diagram you can see that the spermatogonium which have the 2n in number, it goes to the mitosis. Mitosis hoga, simple growth or differentiation hoga, and this spermatogonium is developed into the primary spermatocytes. So what happened? The spermatogonium get differentiated and it forms the primary spermatocyte which have 2n number of chromosomes. So the meiosis 1 occurs. The meiosis 1 is also known as the reduction division, where the chromosome numbers become half. Okay. So from one primary spermatocyte, there is a 2 secondary spermatocytes form, each having n number of chromosomes in the meiosis 1. The meiosis 2 is basically a mitosis. There is no reduction in the number of chromosomes. Basically from one cell, the two cells are formed. Okay. So in the meiosis 2, there is basically 4 spermatids formed. Okay. And these 4 spermatids undergoes the metamorphosis and they form 4 spermatozoa. Okay. So from the development from spermatogonium, okay, from spermatogonium to the sperm is known as spermatogenesis. Okay, the formation of sperm from spermatogonium is known as the spermatogenesis, and then formation of sperm from spermatids is known as spermiogenesis. Means from here to here it is known as spermatogenesis, and from here to here means from spermatid to sperm it is known as a spermiogenesis. So now the structure of a sperm, it have basically 3 regions. This is the head piece, the middle piece and the tail. The main difference of the fish sperm with the other vertebrates or the higher vertebrates is that the fish sperm lacks the acrosome. Okay, so it doesn't have the acrosome. Now the reproductive cycle. Okay, so reproductive cycle is of 2 types, the testicular in the male and ovarian in the female. So first we will say the testicular cycle or the reproductive cycle in the male. Okay, so what happened? The some fishes, they breed once in a year, one season. Some fishes, they breed throughout the year. So the fishes which breed only in a one season of but in a year, they are known as the seasonal breeder, and the fishes which can breed 2-3 times or throughout the year is known as the year round spawner. Okay, so what happens? So when they're the whether we talk about the seasonal spawner or the year round spawner, what happens? There are always changes, some changes occurs in the reproductive organs. Okay, and that changes are occurs in a cycle from phase 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, and then again come to the 1. Okay, so we will discuss those phases, 1 to 5 phases one by one. So the very first phase of the reproductive development in the female is a known, female or a male is a known as a resting phase. Okay, so in the resting phase, the testes remain in the immature stage. Okay, and the seminiferous tubule, it is basically filled with the spermatogonial cell. Okay, the germ cell, the spermatogonial cell, and that is followed by the preparatory phase, okay, which occurs in the season just before the breeding season. So in this phase, what happened? The first and the second meiotic division occurs. So because of this, there is a formation of the primary and the secondary spermatocytes, and the spermatids produced. Means the spermatogenesis occurs in the preparatory phase. Then the mature phase. In this phase, the spermatids are undergo the further metamorphosis and development, and they develop into the mature sperms. Okay, and this process is known as the spermiogenesis. So the mature phase is the phase where the spermiogenesis occur, and the fourth phase is the spermiation phase, or the spermiation phase is the phase where the sperms get released out from the body. Okay, so during the courtship or the mating process, male basically eject the milt. Okay, milt is basically the spermatozoa in the seminal fluid. Okay, out of the body through the genital aperture, and it fertilizes the egg which is released by the female. Okay, and the last one is the post spermiation phase or the spent phase. Okay, in this phase, the test is characterized by the Presence of evacuated seminiferous tubule means the seminiferous tubules are totally evacuated, clear. It doesn't have any sperms. Okay, so that is the rest, the spent or the post spermation phase. Here you can see the difference between the phases. This is the immature one. This is the maturing one. Okay, maturing, and this is the mature testing, just full of the spermatozoa, and this one is the spent testis. Now the female reproductive organ or the ovarian cycle. So in female reproductive organ, it is also composed of three: the ovaries, the oviduct, and the genital pore. So in the fishes, the ovaries are of two types. One is the Castorian ovary and another one is the Zimnorian ovary. So when the mature oocyte is released outside the body through the oviduct, through a duct, okay, then it is known as the Castorian ovary. And when the mature oocytes are released into the body or the coelomic cavity, and then they goes out to the external environment, then they are known as the Zimnorian ovary. Okay, when the mature oocyte, it travels through the oviduct and goes outside the body, is known as the Castorian ovary. And when the mature oocyte is released inside the body cavity or coelomic cavity, and from there it goes to it goes outside, then it is known as the Zimnorian ovary. So most of the teleost fishes, they have the Castorian ovaries, and the cartilaginous fishes and some of the primitive fishes like Dipnoids and Amnia, they have the Zimnorian ovary. Here you can see that this is the head kidney, this is the pair of ovaries, the oviduct, which opens to the exterior through the genital pore. So now the process of oogenesis. Okay, the formation of sperm from the spermatogonium is known as spermogenesis, and formation of oocyte from the oogonium is known as oogenesis. Okay, so what happened? Oogonium is basically a germ cell. Okay, a primordial germ cell which differentiates and develop into the oocytes. Okay, so what happened? Oogonium, after mitosis, it forms several oogonia, and then after differentiated, it develops into the primary oocytes. Okay, the oogonium is differentiated into the primary oocyte. Now in this oocyte, the meiosis occur. Okay, so in the first meiosis, the meiosis 1, or in the reduction division, what happened? There is a two cells are formed, each with n number of chromosomes. The primary oocyte have a 2n number of chromosomes. Now each have the nn number of chromosomes. So after first division, actually this is the unequal division takes place. So one forms the secondary, which is the larger, which have a nucleus, more amount of yolk, and the cytoplasm is known as the secondary oocyte, and another is a smaller one is known as the first polar body. Then the meiosis 2 occur. So from a single secondary oocyte, another two cells are formed. One is the second polar body and one is the ovum. That ovum is actually is developed into the mature egg, which get fertilized with the sperm and develop into a zygote. Okay, so from primary oocyte to the secondary oocyte and a first polar body, and from the secondary oocyte, the ovum and the second polar body. So from the oogonium, the formation of oocyte or the ovum, okay, from oogonium is known as oogenesis. Now these are the different stages of the maturation in the oocyte, from oogonium to the oocyte 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and mature. And during this process, basically what happens, there is a deposition of the different yolk substances to make the oocyte into the mature egg, because after fertilization, okay, the young one, okay, or the developing embryo, it needs a continuous source of nutrient for the development, the source of energy, and all those are provided by the yolk substances which are accumulated inside the egg. So as the testicular cycle, the ovarian cycle also have the 5 phases: the resting, preparatory, pre-spawning, spawning, and spent phase. So the resting phase, what happened in this stage, the ovary is in the immature form, the oogonial cell in the stage 1. Okay, most of the cell of the oogonial cell, they are either in the stage 1 oocyte, or this few are in the stage 2 oocyte. So what happened during this stage, the first meiotic division is initiated, but it is arrested at the Pachytene stage. Okay, then in the second preparatory phase, what happened here, the vitellogenesis occurred. The vitellogenesis is basically a process where the yolk substances get accumulated in the oocytes. Okay, so in the preparatory phase, the vitellogenesis occurred. Then in the maturing or the pre-spawning phase, what happened? The first mitotic division, which was arrested at the Pachytene stage in the resting phase, it get started. Okay, it get completed. Okay, and this is the phase where the size of ovary is maximum, okay, in the female. Then the spawning phase, where basically the gravid ovary or the ovary is filled with the ripe or mature eggs, okay, oocytes. Okay, so in this the what happened, the follicle, egg follicle ruptures, and it basically it release the oocyte to the external environment for fertilization. And the post-spawning phase is the phase where the ovary shows the collapsed appearance, where the follicles are empty after the release of the egg. So here are the seasonal changes which occurs in the ovary of teleops. This one is the resting phase, early maturing, advanced maturing, fully matured, spawning phase, and this is the spent phase ovary. Okay. So now the vitellogenesis, as the vitellogenesis is basically what? This is the accumulation of yolk substance in a egg. So what happened in the female, the blood of the female fish, okay, mature female fish contain one calcium binding lipophosphoprotein, which is known as vitellogenin. Okay, so vitellogenin, it is synthesized in the liver and under the stimulation of estrogen. Okay, estrogen is secreted by the ovary. So what happened when ovary secretes the estrogen, the vitellogenin, which is synthesized inside the liver, it gets secreted out from the liver and it reaches to the ovary. So when it reaches to the ovary, the ovum start absorbing this. Okay, when it reaches to the ovary, what happened? When it goes inside the oocyte, there is some proteolysis occur, breakdown of the vitellogenin occur. So this vitellogenin broken down into the lipovitellin, phosphatin, beta prime component, and C-terminal peptide. So these are basically the, they broken down into smaller vitellogenin and they get deposited inside the yolk. So the yolk protein, which is deposited inside the yolk, the oocyte are of 3 types: the yolk vesicle, which contain glycoprotein, yolk globules, which contain lipoproteins, and oil droplets, which contain glycerates. Okay, so after the completion of vitellogenesis, the movement of germinal vesicle to the animal poles occur. Okay. Now the gomadosomatic index. Okay. So the gomadosomatic index is basically used to know the maturity or the periodicity status of the spawning in the fishes. Okay, means अगर GSI value ज़्यादा है, it means fish matured है, और जैसे जैसे स्पॉनिंग सीजन नजदीक आएगा GSI वैल्यू बढ़ेगी, जैसे ही रिवर्स होगा यानी पोस्ट स्पॉनिंग के बाद से GSI वैल्यू जो है वो reduce होती है. So basically GSI value or the gonadosomatic index shows the maturation stage of the female fish. Okay, and there is a very simple formula to calculate the gonadosomatic index, that is the weight of the gonad is divided by the weight of the fish, and वो जो figure आएगा that will be multiplied by 100. Okay, that will be the GSI. So GSI जो होता है fishes का, वो स्पॉनिंग पीरियड में सबसे ज्यादा होता है, मेच्योर में, और स्पेंट में या इमेच्योर में सबसे कम. ओके, नाउ द फेकंडिटी. So when we talk about the fecundity, it is basically the measure of the reproductive capacity of a female fish. Okay, or it can be identified as the number of ova that are likely to be released by a fish during the spawning season. So the fecundity of the fish is varies from species to species, and even it varies from individual to individual of the same species also. Okay, so the fecundity of the fish is depends on the species, it depends on the size, age, nutritional status, environmental factor, as well as the genetic composition of the fish. Okay, and there is a two method to determine the fecundity in the fish. One is the volumetric method and another one is the gravimetric method. Okay, so in the volumetric method, what basically done, basically the entire ovary of the female is taken out from the abdomen. After the dissection, the entire ovary of the female is taken out from the abdomen and the total volume determines. Okay, then how you will determine the total volume? Basically, what happened, we used to take the volumetric flask, we used to put the mature ovary, okay, and then we add some solution, okay, or suppose there is a solution and then we add the ओवी. सो व्हाट हैपेंड, कितना वॉल्यूम जो है उस लिक्विड का या वाटर का डिस्प्लेस हुआ, दैट विल बी द वॉल्यूम ऑफ द ओवरी. ओके, सो जो टोटल वॉल्यूम जो है वो सैंपल का डिटरमाइन करते हैं और उसके बेसिस पे फिर देयर इज अ वन फॉर्मूला आई विल टेल यू, उसके हिसाब से फिकंडिटी मेजर कैलकुलेट होगी. इन द ग्रेविमेट्रिक मेथड उसमें क्या होता है, बेसिकली यहाँ पर जो है वेट कर लेते हैं, टोटल मैच्योर ओवरी को जो है डाइसेक्ट करके फीमेल से निकालेंगे एंड देन उसको जो है उसको वे करते हैं. तो बेसिकली क्या करते हैं कि 3 सैंपल्स लेते हैं 100 मिलीग्राम्स के रैंडम जगह से, थोड़ा एंटीरियर पार्ट से लेंगे, फिर मिडिल पार्ट से लेंगे, फिर पोस्टीरियर पार्ट से लेंगे. ठीक है, और उसके बाद क्या करेंगे कि उसको लिया, उसके बाद उसको काउंट करेंगे हर पार्ट से 100 mg में.
Ma'am, voice is not clear, ma'am. Ma'am, please repeat.
Okay, gravimetric method में you understand कि first we have to remove the mature ovary. Okay, ovary को remove किया and then 100 milligrams of the sample size were taken from 3 places, from anterior part of the ovary, then from the middle of the ovary and then the posterior part. Okay, and फिर each 100 mg का जो sample है, 100 milligrams का जो sample है, वहां से we used to count the eggs under the binocular microscope. Okay, सो वी हैव बेसिकली क्या किया हमने कि नंबर ऑफ तीनों से हमने एक्स काउंट किए, सैंपल नंबर 1 से, सैंपल नंबर 2 से और सैंपल नंबर 3 से. Now we have to take the average of the number of OVA from these 3 samples of the 100 mg. Okay, so the average, suppose average number came 1000. Okay, so the average number of the ovum from 3 sample is multiplied by the total weight of the ovary, sorry, and then divided by the 100. So that shows the fecundity. So this is the method how to determine the fecundity in the fish.
Ma'am, I think there is some disturbance in the voice, ma'am. I'm not able to.
कुछ भी नहीं सुनाई दे रहा है किसी को भी?
मैम आवाज कभी
मैम
कभी
तो
कट जाती
कट
है.
रहा है.
Static हो रहा, ma'am. Static.
अच्छा देखते हो, अच्छा ठीक, हाँ वेट, एक सेकेंड में दूसरे नेट से कनेक्ट करती हूँ. हाँ, वेट फॉर अ सेकेंड. हाँ, अभी आवाज आ रही है?
यस मैम.
ओके, सो क्या करते हैं, जब फिकंडिटी का जो ग्रेविमेट्रिक मेथड है, बेसिकली what happened? The mature ovary is removed from the by dissection from the abdomen. Okay, the whole ovary has been removed. Okay, उसके बाद क्या करते हैं? Basically, we fix the mature ovary in the 10% formalin for estimating the fecundity. So उसमें क्या होता है? Basically 3 sample लेते हैं हम ovary से. One is from the anterior part, another is from the middle, and third one is from the posterior part. And each sample size is of 100 milligram. Okay, फिर हर 100 milligrams में number of egg count करते हैं under the binocular microscope. So अभी हमने 3 sample से egg के numbers count कर ले. Now we have to take the average from those 3 samples. So the average number of the ova from 3 sample is multiplied by the total weight of the ovary, okay, and divided by 100. That determines the fecundity. Is it clear? Yes or no? I'm audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So now the type of eggs which are found in fishes. Okay, so as I have told, the fishes are diverse, so their type of eggs are also diverse. Okay, so the type of eggs, they are basically different in the term of shape, size, coloration, adhesiveness, nature, buoyancy. Okay, so here we'll see the according to the buoyancy, the fish eggs are of 2 types: the pelagic and demersal. The pelagic means the floating egg, the demersal one is which is in the bottom. Okay, according to the stickness, the egg which sticks to a substrate, some substrate is known as adhesive eggs, and there are some eggs which are non-adhesive, they won't stick to a substrate. Then the based on the amount of yolk, okay, then oligoplasmic, then polyplasmic. Okay, then on the base of the amount of yolk, there is another type of eggs which is known as microlithical eggs, mesolithical egg, and macrolithical egg. Okay, so the microethical eggs means the egg which contain a small or a nil amount of yolk. Okay, then mesolithical egg, like which is found in the amphibians, some primitive fishes like dipnoi and petromizone, the yolk amount is present in the moderate amount. Then the macrolithical or the megalithical eggs, when the egg contain the large amount of yolk. Okay, in most of the bony fishes, they have the macrolithical eggs. Okay, now on the basis of the distribution of yolk, when the yolk is uniformly distributed throughout the ooplasm, then it is known as isolithical or homolithical eggs. Okay, and when it is distributed towards pole, okay, then it is known as telolithical eggs. So the bony fishes, they have the telolithical eggs. Now based on the shape, they may be round, oval, or spherical. Based on the size of the eggs, it varies from species to species. It ranges from 0.3 to 20 mm, but in most of the fishes, their size varies from 1 to 3 mm. Okay, and based on the transparency, some are transparent, some are semi-transparent. On the base of color, some have some color, some are colorless eggs. Okay, so this is about today's class.